Hey, I'm Jamie with Guitarist Magazine. Now, some of the people who follow our YouTube channel and watch our videos won't be aware that Guitarist is also Britain's best-selling and longest-running monthly magazine for guitarists. And sometimes some of the things that we feature in the magazine don't make it onto our YouTube channel and vice versa. So I decided I'm going to keep a little monthly vlog of some of the cool stuff I've seen coming into the magazine so that we can share it with you. You can check out the cool gear that we've clapped eyes on whilst we've been making the magazine, also here on the YouTube channel. So what I did was I went down to our secure lookup, which is under our studio, and I picked out a few things that have been in the news recently or are particularly noteworthy or cool or interesting. So first thing that I grabbed this year is the 70th anniversary of Fender Stratocaster, a big birthday for the biggest electric guitar design of all time, arguably, and Fender have done a 70th anniversary Strat with some nice little features on it, so we're going to take a look at that. Also, whilst we were rummaging around, we found Victory as a British amp brand. They've done an amp with Peter Honore. So he's done an amp with Victory. We're going to have a look at that and hear a little bit more about that. It looks pretty cool. Finally, we thought we'd look at a couple of, well, a trio of pedals, in fact, all recently released. There's Boss's Booster Preamp, BP1W. There's also the Nichols 1966 from Danelectro, which is kind of a fuzz and overdrive in one. And finally, there's the Ambient pedal from Walrus Audio's Fundamental series. So that's Walrus is an American pedal brand known for boutique quality pedals. They've done a more affordable series which brings the same top-notch sonics to a more affordable package. So their ambience reverb is quite interesting because it's designed for those washy soundscapes. Thought that looked pretty cool. So that's what I'm going to take a look at today, and we'll have a little jog through all of these bits of kit, try them out, give them a quick whirl, and you can hear what it's all about and get a flavour of what our month's been like in gear at Guitarist Magazine. Okay, so let's start with the 70th anniversary Strat. As it's a bit of a birthday boy, it has got some fancy things on it. So it is an older body, as indeed most modern Strats are, but it's got a flame maple veneer over the top and this nice comet burst finish here, which is like a sort of sherry red burst, really. Pickups are V-Mod 2s. This technically belongs to the American Professional 2 range. So it's got the V-Mod pickups. This is the second version thereof. Quite like them. They're quite punchy and bright. This is quite a bright sounding guitar, actually, but they're modern without being kind of clinical, which is kind of nice. Narrow tall frets, 22 thereof, and it's got locking tuners as well, which I guess is another slightly fancy contemporary feature. Some people love them because they're easy to change strings. Just pop it through and tighten it up, and away you go. But other people obviously prefer the traditional ones. This is not a traditional guitar per se, despite the fact it celebrates 70 years. It's got a relatively the sort of standard modern radius on the rosewood fretboard, which is 9.5 inches. And down here you've got this 2-point vibrato as well. So you've got your sort of bent steel saddles, which is kind of traditional and part of the Fender Strat sound, but it's got the 2-point sort of pivot going on, which is arguably kind of stays in tune a bit better than the sort of 6-screw type arrangement of the vintage ones. So that's pretty cool. Again, a few more modern touches. These are 2 tone controls, and this is 1 volume, so it's not like a vintage one where you can't change the tone of the bridge pickup. You can do on this one. And the 5-way selector switch doing all of your favourites on there. Let's have a listen to 1 or 2 quick sounds before we move on to some of the other stuff that we've gathered here, because it'd be nice to hear these pickups. As mentioned, we're going through this Victory, the Deputy head, which is kind of a little bit JTM 45E, kind of late 60s British, early 70s British sort of sound to it. Come to that in a minute. Anyway, a few sounds from the Strat. Nothing on the board here. We'll come to the pedals on that in a little while. Just a bit of reverb on the amp itself and the guitar itself. That's neck. So again, it's got that classic hollow in between sound, but I'm hearing quite a lot of bright upper mids and just generally quite a clear clean cut sound, really, very contemporary. It's the middle pickup, and here's bridge and middle. Okay, finally bridge pickup. I mean, that's just a quick run through with a sort of clean tone with a bit of hair on it, crunch tone, if you will. I am noticing that, you know, a lot of the things which are kind of, we think of to do with traditional Strats, they've just tweaked and finessed here and there, like that bridge pickup sounds like it's got sort of quite nice forward mids. It's not as spiky and janky as some vintage Strat bridge pickups. It's sort of been generally cosseted and fettled into a sort of format that's relevant to a modern player without losing the soul of what makes it a Strat. It's not one of those big, dark, gutsy sounding Strats like the sort of sound you'd hear on Voodoo Child on Electric Ladyland, the long version. It's not that swampy sound. It's very much a kind of modern produced sounding Strat, but not clinically so. I mean, you know, it's not got that sterile sound that some Strats have. It's a cool thing, but yeah, I think probably aimed at the contemporary player. We're certainly glad to have it in and give it a little whirl. It's a very comfortable modern Strat to play. So with that, I think we'll turn our attention to this Victory amp to my right here. It's got a sort of wooden enclosure, plywood enclosure, unlike the other lunchbox heads that Victory makes. So it's a bit more, you know, like a classic amp in that respect. But the size of it is still lunchboxy sort of size. It's a 25 watt amp, single channel. And it uses a slightly unusual valve called an EL86. And EL86 is quite similar to the rather more familiar EL84s. Uses slightly different internal voltages, and you can use EL84s in here. EL84s being the power valves that are used in things like AC30s and that sort of thing, very associated with the British sound. These are EL86s, so these are new old stock valves that Victory have rummaged up from a factory called EI that was operating back in what was then the former Yugoslavia, making valves to a very high standard. Because EL86s haven't been used so much in amps, there's still a large existing new old stockpile of them, and this is what this amp has been built around, and they sound really good actually, crunchy and bright, a bit like the EL84 itself. So that's that. It's 25 watts, so it's got a useful amount of mumbo and a good amount of headroom, so it will do cleans quite nicely despite the diminutive size. It has got a sizable headroom if you want it. Notable features, it's got a bright switch there, so if you want to make an already quite bright amp even brighter, you can do that. It's got this voice switch, which is potentially the most interesting control on here. In the top position, it offers the lowest gain setting that the amp will produce, basically. So let's have a little listen to that. So that's the lowest gain setting it will use. That's ideal for cleans. In the middle, you've got a maximum of 6 decibel boost to the gain. So this is punchier and hotter. I mean, obviously this is interactive with the gain control itself. So as I say, it offers a maximum of 6 decibel gain boost there over the lowest gain setting. And then finally, if you move the switch to its bottom position, it adds a treble boost kind of effect and a different sort of harmonic structure to the gain. That's really nice, actually, that. You can just hear there's a bit more going on there, a bit more complexity, EQ slightly different. It's got an emphasis in a different area. I happen to quite like that setting. So I think we'll leave that on that particular setting there as we wind up the gain dial just a little bit so we can hear what it's capable of. It's not a super gainy amp. It's not meant to be. It's meant to do classic rock tones and cleans and a general utility amp rather than a super hot fire-breathing monster. So let's just, the gain's at 12 o'clock at the moment, I'll just wind it up a little bit to about 3 o'clock there, or would be 3 o'clock. That's really cool actually. It's somewhat redolent of, dare I say it, this isn't sacrilege to say it, somewhat redolent of the blues breaker tones that Eric Clapton got, but they've got that savage edge to them. But again, that's with a sort of treble boost type effect. Let's just switch it back to the lowest gain setting. Hear how that sounds. Yes, somewhat simpler tone. You know, it's quite it's nice and plain and warm, and you could see that using that for a lot of things, but a little bit less complex and a little bit less gain for a given gain setting. And put it in the middle, which is that slightly hotter one. Again, that's really nice. It's just a bit fruitier, a bit warmer and hotter. It's a sort of bit more hair on it, really, that one there. So my favourite settings down there. I think I'll probably leave it like that for most of the time if this amp were mine. This is the brightness switch. It's in the down position at the moment. I'll switch it upwards. Effect's quite subtle actually in this setting. I'm not hearing a massive difference there, I'll be honest, in that particular gain regime, but it's there if you want to use it for that subtle difference. And it's got onboard reverb as well. It's got a digital reverb. So again, this is at 12 o'clock at the moment. Let's turn it up a little bit. I might just inch the gain down a bit, and let's hear how the reverb sounds at nearly full chat. I know loads of people love spring reverb on a classic amp, but I have to say that sounds pretty cool. Nice, smooth, not too crazy. A lot of people find that perfectly usable for most of their needs. Okay, so onto the pedals, and first up is this Danelectro Nichols 1966, which is a name that needs a bit of explaining, really. So Steve Riddinger, who was the guy behind Fox pedals, and is the current boss of Danelectro. Back when he was a teenager in 1966, he was living in a place called Nichols Canyon with his parents, and though very youthful then, he was into designing circuits for effects pedals in the sort of burgeoning market for effects pedals. And he designed an overdrive fuzz circuit, which he put into a thing called a Liverpool fuzz, which sold a few thousand units back then. This is that circuit, but replanted into a modern chassis, if you will, and with some nice little cool tweaks to it. So it's a fuzz and an overdrive, and you get independent control over the fuzz side and the drive side. So really it's all about blending those two things together and arriving at a sound you think is pretty cool. So it's also got a mid-cut setting as well we can put on a switch. So let's just have a quick listen to those sounds. It really is meant to be for those people who don't want an outright fuzz. They want something that lives in that hinterland between fuzz and drive. So let's have a little go. I'm on the neck pickup of here into the Deputy by Victory, and nothing else on my pedal board is on at the moment. Oh, turn the reverb down just a touch. So that's the unaffected, unfuzzed signal, and we'll switch it on here. Okay, first impressions, it's really quite nice. It does what it says on the packet. It's kind of drivey, kind of fuzzy, and at the moment I've got the fuzz, which is this knob here, turned up higher than the drive. That one's at about 2 o'clock, this one's about 1 o'clock. If we turn the drive down and the fuzz up, we obviously hear more of the fuzz character. That's a bit more sizzly, and loads of compression and sustain. And likewise, if I turn that down, turn the drive up, we get something a bit more civilized. It's kind of like a low gain drive, really. I must say I like the drive side of it. It's kind of more like a nice, juicy, clean boost, really. If we leave the drive wound up and then we bring the fuzz in as well to a fairly high degree, you can hear it really wanting to go into feedback just straight away. So it's going to be fairly hot and swampy. I really like that. It actually reminds me, if we take away the fuzz and drive kind of moniker, it actually reminds me of a valve amp that's really cranked. You can hear those harmonics wanting to burst out, they want to go. And that's a sound that so many people who are into classic rock and Hendrixy stuff would find useful. And I really like the fact that you've got independent control of those. I think you've got a lot of pedal for your money there, almost 2 pedals. As mentioned, let's move those back to about 12 o'clock. As mentioned, there is a mid-cut setting. There's tone and volume as well, fairly self-explanatory, but let's try the mid-cut setting. Here it is with the standard setting. Put it on mid-cut. Oh, it's quite a deep mid-cut, isn't it? It's almost like switching from the neck pickup to the hollow in-between sound on a Strat. I'm guessing that's not really for the moderate amount of gain setting that we've got here. If we turn it up, I reckon that's going to come into its own. So let's get a bit grungy again here. Okay, so now we know what that's for. It's almost like a kind of adds an upper harmony or an upper octave, almost like an octave fuzz type sound. I don't think it is an octave fuzz per se, but it just leaves that sizzling, squealing edge intact while shelving off some of the bass. Very cool pedal that, actually. I can see a lot of people finding that useful. Seems to match up well with this British sounding amp. So let's move on to our next of our drive pedals that we have here. This is quite an interesting thing, a new release from Boss, or relatively new, the Booster Preamp BP1W. It's just a Waza pedal, which is kind of like, almost like their de facto custom shop, if you like. It's where they make things, all of the Waza stuff is made in Japan, and it's all kind of interesting, tweaked high-spec, extra high-spec components type stuff. And this is an interesting pedal. As it says on the front, it's a booster and a preamp, but the interesting side of that is that the preamps come from classic Boss effects that are known for having quite a nice internal preamp sort of sound, flattering kind of sound. So we've got the RE201 Space Echo preamp is in here, and you've also got the preamp circuit from the CE1 Chorus. So, you know, really classic, going right back Boss effects that were known to have a nice sound to them. Over and above what the actual pedal was doing, chorus and delay respectively, and so they bottled just that bit of those two classic effects in a kind of always-on style pedal, you might say. Lowish gain, it will go from, like I say, a sort of flattering boost all the way through to something like overdrive. Let's just have a quick listen, because this is all about tone conditioning, really. It's not about screaming gain. It's really about taking your tone and just giving it that little buff and polish and a little bit of a lift. So at the moment we've got it on the C1 side. So this is the classic analog chorus side. It doesn't do chorus, just to reiterate. It's just the preamp circuitry from that classic pedal. Let's have a little listen. It's off at the moment, so here's what it sounds like without on the neck pickup on the Strat. Let's turn the pedal on. Okay, that's nice. Levels just past 12 o'clock. Gain is just before that. It's about 11 o'clock. So not extreme settings, but you can hear immediately it's just got a bit more mumbo to it. So let's switch to the RE201 side. Again, we should hear a slight difference to that tone. Oh. Go back again. Okay, it's subtle, but there are some differences. Perhaps the C1 preamp is a little bit sweeter. RE21 arguably a bit more push, edgier, but not a huge amount in it, but there is a difference in character. Let's go back. That's actually, sorry, in the middle setting there. I do beg your pardon, that was in the natural setting. So there's also a neutral setting there, I should say that. Or they're calling it natural, but it's like sort of less pronounced. So let's go back to C1 and do that again. Okay, over on the RE201 side. And then natural in the middle. Natural seems to have the least push, as you might expect. It's the nearest to just a straight clean boost. So all very nice actually, all very usable. Let's just turn up the gain a little bit so we're edging into that overdrive territory. I'm going to put it in the C1 sides, I quite like that. And let's turn the gain up to something near its maximum extent. It's nice. It's got that cooking amp sound. Again, we spoke about blues breakers earlier. Almost that 60s sort of levitating amp at full whack sort of sound. Again, it's doing subtle things to the EQ that are just make it sound juicy. Let's go across to the RE201 side with this higher gain setting. Back into the natural setting in the middle. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I think the natural setting in the middle would be more, your Stevie Ray Vaughan fans would probably gravitate to that because it just delivers that super big clean sound. The RE201 on the high gain settings actually seems, to my ears, in the room to be a bit wilder sounding and maybe a bit fatter sounding. C1 side, maybe a little bit smoother, a little bit more rounded. Subtle shades of grey, but that's where we all live when we're looking for tone conditions. We're looking for that Goldilocks just right solution. So yeah, that's a cool pedal, isn't it? And you know, it's the sort of pedal that you just leave on your board all the time, even while other pedals are changing, because it just does nice things to your tone. So the Boss Waza BP1W. Okay, so just a little word on signal chain. I've pulled out some of the normal things. This is my Guitarist demo board. I normally have some J-Rocket stuff on there and some Free the Tone stuff. I've popped these pedals into the places where those pedals normally live. So this is where the drive pedals live before it goes to the effects loop, and the time-based effects go afterwards, and they are routed into the effects loop of this pedal, amp here, just in case you're wondering. So I've taken my Free the Tone Ambient Space reverb out and put this Walrus Audio Fundamental Ambient pedal in. So the Fundamental series is more affordable than their normal US built stuff. It's stripped back to the basics. It's got a kind of funky little slider based design rather than knobs. So you've got 3 controls there: decay, tone and mix, and then a switch that does 3 different voices basically, or 3 different kind of algorithms maybe: deep, lush and haze. The idea here is not to do your utility reverbs. This is your soundscape reverbs, your painting with sound type colours, tonal colours. So we'll have a little go on that. I'm going to put it all at what is effectively 12 o'clock, even though it doesn't look like a clock face. One thing I have found about this pedal is that the basic in the middle 12 o'clock settings are actually quite heavily affected. So it really sets out its stall as a sort of lush drench of ambient reverb. So let's just switch it on with everything centered. Straight away it's like you've had a sort of mystical experience, you know. That's on the haze setting, which is quite a gentle setting. Let's put it in lush, again with everything more or less centered. A little bit softer, a little bit dreamier. And then deep, which seems to have a sort of pre-delay into it, you know, that sort of hit the note and then the reverb comes in. So as mentioned, when you've got everything centered, there's a lot of effect on there. So you don't have to use it quite as sort of saturated as that. If you take the mix down, obviously that's giving you less of the effect and more of the fundamental sound of the guitar. Turn the decay down as well, which is like kind of like the room size, I guess, or the virtual cavity size or virtual cavern size. You can tell that this pedal is really setting out its stall, as I say, as a soundscape builder, because you have to really turn down the mix and the decay to get anything like a sort of standard reverb, really. That being said, we should do something we should have done probably just before and take all of the reverb off the amp. Let's just hear that again. This is with everything turned down a bit. So that's kind of approaching a conventional hall type thing. Let's center everything up one more time. And this is without any reverb on the amp at all. That's in the deep setting. I'll come across the lush. You can have another hear of that again. Not really a reverb for those sort of fast single notes. They kind of get a bit swallowed up by it. It's more of those washers. Let's come across to haze again. Again, I've taken all the reverb off the amp this time. Coming back to that haze setting, it feels a little bit more dreamlike. I don't know if there's a little bit of modulation on there or just a sort of slight shimmer. that you can obviously kind of enhance with a bit of trem on the guitar. It's really cool, actually. Again, if you're not expecting it to do, you know, bog standard utility things, let's turn everything up full and see what happens. It's on the haze setting at the moment. Wow, that's completely changed the envelope of the effect. Almost a sort of infinite wash of soundscape reverb. That's lovely, actually. Let's turn it to lush and see what that does when it's all maxed out. Hopefully something just as interesting. Wow, that almost seems to put it in a kind of freeze mode where it's just literally holding there in whatever note you played and then overlaying another thing. It's just like layers and layers of washes of reverb. That's really cool. Let's go to deep and max that out and see what that does, because I think it really seems to be exposing what the underlying voice is doing. So this is deep, all maxed out. So that's the Walrus Audio Fundamental Ambient pedal. Really interesting. You can lot of scope in that. You could probably have many happy hours fiddling around with that and getting kind of Blade Runner-y sounds, or just kind of interesting sort of violin swell type sounds out of it. Yeah, really cool that. And as I say, it's from the Fundamental range from Walrus. It's a bit cheaper than their core range stuff. Very, very worth checking out. And for all you soundscapers out there, a very cool pedal. Anyway, I'm Jamie Dickson, Editor-in-Chief of Guitarist. This has been my tone diary for this month, and we'll see you again soon. If you've liked this video, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and thanks very much for watching.